this class from inside the college, and as a result, we've brought in somebody from the administration. I don't know if you've met Dr. Carlson before. He's the president of the college. He's also going to film us today. I'm doing some training myself as an adjunct. I've been doing it since August or September, and part of the training is to get videotaped when you're teaching, and then sit down with someone who teaches some of the communication courses, public speaking type courses, to critique all your bad habits, like scratching your ear, as he said, bending over, those kinds of things. So this is a second part for me. I did a 5-minute deal. So the camera won't be on you, right? Correct? The students won't be on. Well, that's too bad, because we've got some real stars of the show here. All right, Chapter 9, we talk about profit planning, budgeting, and control. And as you guys know, in my business, we deal with businesses that are in trouble, financial trouble, generally serious financial trouble. And we see consistently, almost with every one of our clients, that none of our clients are very effective at profit planning at all. That's not to say that if you're really good at profit planning, you're guaranteed to have a successful company, because there's a lot of other variables you got to deal with. But almost universally, this is one of the things that we see probably 100% of the time, is our clients aren't good at this. And if you got a good crystal ball, which is what profit planning is all about, you know, if you can peer into the future and kind of determine what you think the business is going to do and perform, and what it needs in terms of materials and labor and cash and those kinds of things, you can run a pretty good business. But it takes a pretty simple business to be able to be real accurate at profit planning. We still need to do it, but as we talk about this morning, you're going to see some of the weaknesses in doing budgeting. Okay, this is just a little bit of vernacular here, but really a budget takes your plans for the year, whatever you're planning on doing. Buying another division, opening a warehouse somewhere. If you're in the retail business like Sarah Wood here, expanding from 75 hardware stores to 150 hardware stores, or you know, you sit down and you plan what your next fiscal year, really your next 3 or 4 or 5 fiscal years, but most of the focus is on the next year. And the budget, all the budget really is just taking the plan and you dollarize your plan, okay? Meaning you come up with actual dollars. Target sales, target cost, target profit. So that's, your budget really is just a dollarized version of what your plans are for the year. The process we go through, we call that budgeting. That's a process. The end result is the budget. And then, as we'll talk about this morning, we try to use the budget with the other things that we're learning to help manage the business and help control the business. Okay? We look at our actual performance in comparison to our budget, and we see how closely we're tracking versus that budget. We may change the plans that we had for the year. It may indicate that there's a problem area that we've got to look at when we get off track. But very often, sometimes it's just the fact that we don't have a good crystal ball of the future. You know, things happen to our businesses that are outside of our control. So the budget process is really just a way of giving us a roadmap to help monitor the business and see whether it's healthy or not. We've got 2 aspects to this. We have planning, the planning process. We develop our business plans, our strategies, our tactics for the coming 1 to 3 years. And then we use the budget as a means of control. We use the budget as a means of control to help us determine whether we're on or off track. Several advantages to budgeting. It causes us to be able to step outside the business, the day-to-day stuff that we're working on, and kind of get some distance between ourselves and the fires that we're fighting every day, and gets us really to think about the business more from a distance. I think that's probably the biggest advantage of doing budgeting, is, you know, it allows us to just really kind of distance ourselves from the business and think about things. We define specific goals and objectives. defining those goals and objectives are really important for the other members that are in the organization, because it takes our plans and it puts them into simpler, clearer terms for them to understand where we're trying to go with the business. As I mentioned, it helps us determine whether we're on or off track. We can uncover potential bottlenecks that might get in our way in terms of achieving our plans. It's a way that we allocate resources. By that meaning, we don't have an unlimited pile of cash. I mean, Sarah does. Catherine, yeah, she's got limits on her pile of cash, but it's a pretty big pile of cash, I hear. But most of our businesses, we don't have unlimited resources in terms of people, in terms of our equipment capacities. If we take the college for an example, this college seems to have unlimited resources, doesn't it? You better edit that one out. All they do is raise our taxes, and we just put more money into it. And so we just build more buildings. But no, seriously, we have to allocate resources. You know, in the accounting department would be a good example. There's only like 5 full-time teachers. That's it. I think there's about 20, maybe more than 20 instructors. But a lot of the departments throughout the college, you'll see that. So what the college does is it has to, first of all, allocate its full-time teachers. And then we look at what we think the enrollments are going to be, and they plan for the enrollments, how many students they think they're going to be enrolled in the classes. There's a bit of guesswork here. You also have to, plan what days and what times those classes are. I had an opportunity to teach a second class this fall over at Mission Mall that ended up getting canceled about 3 or 4 days before the class. And the reason was the actual enrollment, I think, was underneath sort of a barometer they use of 8 or 9 students or something like that. So, even the college has to go through that. And when we talk about uncovering potential bottlenecks, that's how I got this job originally, was that, all of a sudden they had an opening, which happens fairly often. They had an opening, one of the adjuncts had a conflict a year and a half or so ago, and they were desperate to find somebody to teach the class. That's what I did. Same thing with Baker. That's how I got hooked up with Baker. They underestimated, if you will, the number of students at Baker and Topeka, and they needed somebody on a short notice to do that. So even colleges and universities, I'm going to sneeze here in a minute, even colleges and universities go through a planning process, and they use it to help allocate. Excuse me. That sneeze has been brewing for about 20 minutes. I knew it was going to happen once we started taping. One of those killer sneezes. It helps us coordinate activities within the business, and it helps us communicate our plans into terms that our employees can understand. This is an important slide. Important slide here. Not a whole lot of disadvantages to budgeting, by the way. This is a great one. Now, as I mentioned to you, I'm doing everything I can on this videotape, as this class knows, to get fired. And this might be the thing that will help me do it. But we get academians, full-time academians. Dan, are you an academian? Okay. I'm not sure about that, but we'll take his word for it. Who write these textbooks and these slides? Okay? Oftentimes these are folks that haven't been out functioning in the business world. They've been in education. Now, I cannot argue about this. Emphasis on only and red. Absolutely. You know how often that happens in the real world? Like, almost never. Almost never. That's theoretical. And actually, the way it works is the higher you move up the food chain in an organization, the more you're held responsible for things that you can't control, that you cannot control. You can't control if a great big account goes belly up, right? One of your customers goes bankruptcy and belly up, and all of a sudden your business goes under. How about all the the little suppliers to the automotive manufacturers in Detroit right now? How do you think those folks are doing? Not doing very well. With SUV sales off 50% in 1 year, they're not doing very well. Yet, you know, whoever owns those businesses or runs those businesses, you know, they're going to feel the effects of that. So my experience has been that although I agree with this, it's best to try to do this. But in practice, it's very, very difficult to hold people accountable strictly for those things that they can control. It sounds good. In reality, it's very, very difficult to do. We have to determine what period we're looking at to budget. And the periods can fluctuate from day to day, week to week, month to month, rolling 12 months, rolling 18 months, looking out 1 year, a quarter at a time, 3 years at a time, 5 years at a time. So, you know, we can budget for a whole different bunch of periods depending on what we're trying to use that budget for. And in our business, with our distressed clients, now we focus week to week pretty hard. It's week to week. We're trying to get them to be able to make money and be cash flow positive week to week. Healthier businesses maybe don't have to look at that often, you know. Businesses that are in good shape financially maybe don't have to look at it that closely. But we have to choose what the period is. And generally, most businesses are budgeting for the next fiscal year. Where they're really doing a hard detailed budget would be the next fiscal year. We have what we call a self-imposed budget or a participative budget, meaning that those people that have to be involved to make it happen, to produce the results that are in the plan, it's best that those key associates are actively involved in the development of that budget process. One of the big problems in the effectiveness of budgeting, companies who budget but maybe don't do it very well, is it tends to be imposed top down. You know, somebody comes in and says, Anthony, your sales targets are X for this year. Now go make it happen, you know, and tell me when you get there. You know, there's a lot of companies that's how they do the budget, pretty much. Mike, you can spend $20,000 this year. That's your budget. Brandon, you can't have more than 12 employees. and it happens quite often. And as you can imagine, that the firms that do that generally aren't real successful in using budgeting as a control tool. So, you know, it's not just, this looks like it's just management employees, okay? But organizations are getting a lot flatter. There isn't the structure that there used to be there 20 and 30 years ago. You don't have as many layers of management. We come in here to try to turn a business. We start at the top. We go, try to eliminate those jobs. Why? Well, that's where the money is, generally. In a lot of businesses, the person out in the assembly line may be more important than the senior executives who sit in the cushy offices and fly their corporate jets like people we know, right, in our class that have those kinds of jobs. But most of these things are flatter. Now, these organizations are flatter, which means we may have to involve the person that's on the production line in the budgeting process. If we're thinking about buying a sophisticated piece of equipment, that person's going to have to operate. Makes sense, doesn't it? You know, to have that person involved in the decision process and the budgeting process. If they've got to make it happen, then generally you want that person involved in the budget process. And it doesn't make any difference what level of the organization that they sit. Because some small businesses, you know, that have, I don't know, 10, 15, 20, 25 employees, they don't have all those layers, you know. Okay, another important slide. I'm quite honestly in this chapter, in the homework I've tried to assign you, I'm more interested that you walk away with the concepts of budgeting than the mathematical computations that you do. There's a lot of math in Chapter 9, pushing your pencil around and computing things. Okay. I mean, I guess it's good to kind of see how you budget for expected cash collections from your customers, but unless you guys are going to be directly